Good morning. Welcome to the City of Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for November 10th, 2022. Have some housekeeping items to go over first. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda, there are speaker request forms on the table along the left wall. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the staff seated at the left of the dais. Now, cell phones and electronic devices. At this time, we would like to ask that any member of the audience that has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer down to silence. Now, if you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so that the meeting is not disrupted. On the consent calendar today, items 1 through 5 have been placed on the consent calendar and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with the staff's recommendations by a single vote. Now, any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of the Planning Commission are recommendations to the City Council, and the City Council will make the final decisions with the exception of the following items. Item 2, 22PD047. Item 3, 22UR024. Item 4, 22UR026. The Rapid City Planning Commission actions on these items are final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. Now, all appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following actions by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 5 that staff would like to remove from the consent calendar for separate consideration?
No, thank you.
Are there any items 1 through 5 the Planning Commission would like to remove from the consent calendar for separate consideration? Are there any items 1 through 5 that any audience member would like to remove from the consent calendar for separate consideration? The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items 1 through 5 in accordance with staff recommendations. Brooke moved and Karen second. And so, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now consider the regular agenda items individually. The public hearing on item 22UR027 is hereby open. Let's see. We have, I'm sorry, does staff have a presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Kip Harrington, Long Range Planning Manager. This item is 22UR027, which is a conditional use permit to allow a medical cannabis dispensary located at 910 Main Street in the original town of Rapid City. The aerial photograph shows this adjacent to Main Street, just to the west of 9th Street. The zoning is Central Business District. Central Business District is a permitted zoning district for medical cannabis dispensaries. Future land use shows this as downtown. Major street plan identifies Main Street as a principal arterial street, also West Boulevard nearby as a principal arterial street. Some pictures of the property. 910 Main is located right here where you see the signage. And the proposed signage and elevations of the signs from the applicant. Took some site photos just the other day. Here's a picture of the property in question showing that the sign has been posted and legal notice has been met. This is looking across the street from 910 Main. You may notice that this is the federal building across the street. This is looking to the east along Main Street and looking to the west along Main Street. The reason this is before you today is 910 Main Street is within 500 feet of Halley Park, which is a public park and is also zoned Park Forest District, which is considered a residential zoning district. Both of those zoning districts, or both of those items, require conditional use permit if the location in question is within 500 feet. A portion of this building is located within 500 feet of that Halley Park, so that is why it's a conditional use permit. The applicant is requesting to transfer an existing license through the state from 902 Main Street, which is 2 doors to the east, to 910 Main Street. And the main reason for that is one of the stipulations we have in any cannabis-related business is that this building be fire sprinkler protected or have some sort of fire suppression system. The 902 Main Street building does not have a fire suppression system, and those are quite costly to install, so the applicant is looking to relocate the existing medical cannabis dispensary license from a permitted location at 902 Main Street to a conditional use location at 910 Main Street. So that is the reason you are seeing this today. I am available for any questions. The applicant is here as well if you have any questions, and we have a couple speakers in the audience that would like to address this item.
Kip, could you just go through his operational plan?
Sure. So as with any medical cannabis dispensary, the State Department of Health has very stringent requirements on the operation of these establishments. So the applicant has submitted a full odor control plan to ensure that there are no odors and impacts the adjacent businesses, a full security plan showing the security and the cameras and the types of regulations they are going under to protect the business, and also a very strict waste management plan to make sure that they're not disposing of any cannabis products improperly. So they're meeting all of the State Department of Health regulations on this, and so with that we are recommending to approve with the stipulations as outlined in the staff report.
Okay, thank you, staff. I have several speaker request forms, and does anyone on the dais have any questions? The chair recognizes Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick, I kind of missed it. Is 910 Main, it is sprinkled and up to fire safety standards, or the old location was sprinkled?
910 Main Street does have an existing fire suppression system in place, while 902 Main Street does not.
Okay, up to date and all that. Thank you.
Seeing no other request, we'll go to the speaker request forms, and Mr. Tim Powell. If you'd please come to the podium and state your name, please.
Good morning. I'm Tim Powell. I own the Red Wing Shoe Store, just about 2 doors to the west of this location. I've gone through the community development newsletter that came out, looking at a little bit of this, the criteria, what have you, that the city and the state put forward. The thing that jumps out at me is the first thing listed is parking. I realize that the downtown central business district zoning has a little different parking rules, regulations required than the rest of the town does. I realize that, but I think this is something that you guys should take into consideration. This block already has a shortage of on-street parking. If you drive down the street through 3/4 of the day, you're going to find that there won't be more than one, if any, parking spots open in front of this location. It's my understanding that this is a medical cannabis dispensary, and with that in mind, I was told someplace along the line that we should treat it like we would a pharmacy. Now, every pharmacy that I'm aware of has some kind of convenient parking up front where people can come and go for quick purchases, for lack of a better term. This location doesn't have that. If the patients, the customers, one of the things that cannabis is supposed to help with is mobility issues, as I understand it. You get somebody that with mobility issues that can't park in front of the location, Maybe they can park across the street and then jaywalk across 3 lanes of traffic to get there. Probably not. I'm afraid that the solution for most of these people is to go down 2 doors and park in my parking lot. I'm frustrated with that if that happens, and I'm sure it will. If you're familiar with the downtown situation, parking is always tight. When I bought my building, it came with, I bought that parking lot, a 125-foot wide lot downtown. Will hold about a dozen parking places. You take the math on that, that means that we spend about $10,000 per parking spot. As a business owner down there, those spots are valuable to me. I know if you drive by my shop, you'll find a lot of times that there are open spots in my lot, but there's an awful lot of times that there are not any open spots. I need that parking in my area. I'm afraid these guys will, the customers, will take the easy way out and infringe on my parking spots. I'd like you to think about the neighbors in that respect. I think that there's a better location out there than what this is. I know it would be frustrating to me just for that purpose. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. The chair recognizes Mr. Mark Bachman. And Mr. Bachman, if you could please state your name on the microphone, please.
Good morning, I'm Mark Bachman with Seeley's Clothing Store at 910 Main Street. And I'm not happy with the dispensary next to our store with the parking consideration, and also Halley Park down the way. And then there's also Airbnb apartments upstairs, which I used to live up there, and they're not real soundproof or anything like that. So I could hear stuff from down below. And then our wall that connects to this dispensary is very, you know, I can hear Josiah talk, you know, in the other space all the time. So it's not very soundproof. And I just, I'm worried about the smell coming into our store. And I see that there was dispensaries down on, or downtown in like the Wicked that were considered, and those were not approved. And I think we're in that same situation where they shouldn't be approved, you know, at 910 Main Street either. There isn't even a garbage for us to use. That Josiah, we use the garbage that the Essence of Coffee has. So Josiah doesn't even have garbage cans for us to use because there's not enough room in the back. I think, you know, you guys said that there was supposed to be enough garbage to dispose of the cannabis. And there's nothing back there except for Essence's cardboard boxes and the regular garbage cans. So I'd like you guys not to approve this location for a dispensary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bachman. Seeing no lights here, we have another speaker, Mr. Kittrick Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Kit Jeffries, one of the owners of Puffy's Dispensaries. As you guys may have heard, IM27 did go down. I'd just like to address that right away. This isn't recreational marijuana. This is still medical cannabis, as one of the previous speakers pointed out. Still passed in favor in 2020 by 70% of the electorate. Just to address some of the issues within the parking, I think that is an interesting conversation to have. Currently, right now, Josiah is not really using that building much more than just for one standalone desk that's in there. No matter what, that business is going to get utilized within offices or a dispensary, whatever it's going to be. If parking is going to be an issue, no matter what goes into that building, whenever it goes into that building, parking will be an issue. To address on parking, I think it would be advantageous and forward-thinking to look at medical cannabis as a pharmacy and include some sort of rule and regulation to allow drive-through windows, as does Walgreens, Boyd's, some of the other pharmacies that exist. That would be really advantageous and forward-thinking to allow our capable people or handicapped people to have the opportunity to shop without having to really get out of their cars. We feel that being across the street from the federal building increases the security of the location. My mom, Puffy, worked at the federal building for 30 years. Just being down there doing site visits and tours, there's always security that walks the perimeter of that building about every 10 minutes. We feel that the increase in the security cameras, motion sensors, things like that is going to heighten the security of the area. On the other note, we have the odor control plan. You can go down to our dispensary at 2120 West Main Street, Unit 5 in Rapid City. You can talk to Good Stuff Burgers. He has never smelled marijuana coming out of our store one time. We are redundant in how we utilize our odor control plan to make sure that we are good neighbors. That's the only thing that we want to be in this community, is good neighbors. At the end of the day, if this doesn't work out and not approved, we'll move back 2 doors down and pay for the sprinkler protection system at 910 Main Street. That's essentially what we're trying to do, is to eliminate that. We feel as though with how the planning and zoning map is laid out, we have 4 foot of one corner of this building that's cut off for conditional use permit, or we'd never be here. It would just be a permitted location. We'd move on through the system and nothing would ever happen. As is our 910 Main Street, that was never brought in front of this commission for that exact same reason. However, it's just that it is just that close, 4 foot close to Halley Park. So with that, I ask your favorable consideration, and I appreciate your time, and I'll stand around for questions. Thank you.
We have any, excuse me, thank you. We have a question here from Kelly.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So the parking thing, I would assume that this suite was occupied and in business for quite a while. So, if it's a 944 square foot suite, I would guess that the traffic impact would be similar to the prior tenant or business that was there. My question is, if there's an Airbnb above it, are there any regs or limitations to having a dispensary next to residential? I should probably know the answer to that, but I don't. I guess the question would be to staff, having a residence right above a dispensary. Is there anything written or, codified that would factor into this approval, or is it a non-issue?
Mr. Chair.
Chair recognizes Vicky.
So this is the first that we've heard about Airbnbs being in this building. That is concerning. That may not be a legal use. We are currently working on a short-term rental ordinance. So setting that aside, it is acknowledged that in the Central Business District, where a medical cannabis dispensary is permitted and or conditional, depending upon how close it is to parks, playgrounds, child care centers, residential districts, then it's a conditional use. Because the Central Business District is not a residential zoning district, similar to general commercial, you can have residential above the first floor. And so that is just a different character within that neighborhood. If you're living in the downtown area or in a general commercial area, we don't protect the integrity of that residential use similar to we would a residential district. So a dispensary would be permitted if a residence were above the first floor of the building.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I might continue.
Yes, please.
So there were some good comments today from the neighborhood about parking and about odor. As we all know, the Central Business District does not require any off-street parking. Our parking is structured so that we have metered parking, leased parking, and 2-hour parking within our downtown core. We continually monitor this. We work with many of the downtown organizations that are orchestrated through Main Street Square to identify any problem areas. We have acknowledged, as have many of those within the downtown, we don't have a parking issue, we have a walking issue. And we still believe we have to park right out or in 2 doors down from the business that we're walking to. We continue to monitor the downtown to see if there's any changes that we need to make. We can create ADA parking if there is a need for it. We are required to have X number of ADA parking within the downtown area. We look at contour, where's the on-ramp to the sidewalk, how do we safely get them there. So if there were an issue with that, we certainly could take that into consideration if, as an example, if this location or if Kittrick were to open up at 2 doors down at the permitted location, if he came to us and said, hey, we may need an ADA spot, we could work with the city engineer to see if that's a doable opportunity at that location or not. So we're flexible in that. We do try to meet the needs of the downtown core. Kittrick made a comment about encouraging us to look at allowing drive-through windows or pickup windows similar to other pharmacies. I don't see that happening anytime soon. Right now, the customers have to come into a vestibule area. They have to have their medical card. They have to have their ID. We don't require that at a typical pharmacy. There'd be concern with who's in the vehicle with them, and this goes all the way back to state regulations. So in addition, just for common knowledge, you cannot have a drive-through window in the Central Business District. That's not the kind of activity that we want to encourage. So probably if we leave that out of our consideration for today. The odor was a great comment, and when the gentleman said that he could hear the voices next door, that is concerning. The one thing about this use is it is required that they have odor control to the extent that you cannot smell cannabis at the lot line. And if that happens, based on our city ordinance, we can shut them down. And anyone who's come in and worked with us, whether it's a permitted location or a conditional location, we've made that very well known. We do not want to be one of those cities where you drive in and you can smell cannabis in the air. And so far, we have not had any complaints. We don't have a lot of these open and operational right now, but we will be monitoring that closely. If there were a complaint about I can smell it, we have the tools in the toolbox to require that they improve odor control or cease and desist operation until they address that problem. If you've got any more questions for staff, we'll stand by.
I know the planning staff was up first. I also have a couple of other planning commissioners. Did you want to go now, or?
I had nothing, no. I'm just
Okay.
here for questions. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vicki answered the question, and my question was going to be, if they were not good stewards, not good neighbors, could this be revoked down the road if there were issues that were in violation of anything? So, I mean, any business owner, yeah, if you have concerns, this is the forum to do it, and we appreciate feedback. This happens in residential situations where they voice their concerns or questions about something new in the neighborhood. So, but it sounds like they've done their homework and they're very professional and so far so good. So that answered my question about worst case scenario down the road, this could be revoked if there are issues.
Mr. Chair. So,
I'm sorry, Chair recognizes Vicki.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So, if there was a complaint, let's stick with the odor one because that one it would be the most obvious. If odor is evident outside of the building and a complaint is filed, based on the ordinance, we can stop the activity immediately. In other words, the business is shut down.
Right.
The conditional use permit would still stand, but they would need to bring it into compliance before they could open the door again. Let's say there were repeated complaints, it was just over and over again that they weren't controlling the odor, then there is a process within our ordinance that allows for the Planning Commission to revoke the conditional use permit. So, again, if we did have those repeated complaints, it could require another hearing before you for reconsideration.
Okay, thanks, Vicki.
Chair recognizes Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate Mr. Powell in his comments about the parking. I go to the Essence of Coffee frequently, and it is hard to find a place to park. I always end up parking across the street and jaywalking. Don't tell anybody. I don't know that pharmacies as a whole have a lot of traffic, but when you look at the location where it's approved and where this location is, at least that's farther away. It doesn't require a conditional use permit because obviously it's not in the zone that requires that. And I believe there are some parking spots there which would accommodate people to do that, so that wouldn't be an issue. I have some concern with the people living above, whether it's B&B or just somebody that's renting or living there. To me, that seems odd or something. It seems like that's closer to residential than, say, the park, obviously, because the park is far enough away. I don't see a big issue with the park itself, but I just don't know that this is the right location. I understand the reasoning for moving. It's really expensive to put in the fire suppression and sprinkle a building, and so I appreciate that reason, and I think that's the main reason he's moving, obviously. But for me, I'm not sure that that's a good enough reason, I guess. I think that that first location is the proper one. I'm just not as concerned about that, but this one obviously has some issues, so that's my comments.
Chair recognizes Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Questions for staff. So I have three just quick ones for clarification. The first is, and if this was in the packet and I missed it, I apologize. How many people in a radius of this had to be notified, and were there other comments outside of the people that are here today?
We followed our standard notification procedure. It's within 250 feet of the business. And so, yes, they were all notified. We received a few emails, which were attached as public comment, and we also received a few phone calls. And most of the people that have contacted us are here to speak today. I did answer a few questions over the phone, but the only people that voiced negative opinions on this are either here today speaking or have submitted email comments to us that were attached to the item.
Thank you. Second question, is the Airbnb or a residential upstairs enough for us to not vote on this today, or not necessarily?
So, Mr. Chair.
Chair recognizes Vicki.
Thank you. Yes, I had buzzed in after Karen had made that comment. Our regulations were not written so that residential above a commercial use would be grounds for denying this. We specifically have criteria that says there is consideration that you can take into account if it is a residential district. And that was done on purpose because we figured there would be, similar to on sale, there's an encouragement that there be 500 feet between any on sale. However, it's a residential district, and this is a commercial district. There are many, many apartments right now that are above taverns and restaurants that serve on-sale liquor in the downtown area, and we treat that differently than we would if someone wanted to open a tavern on a residential block within a residential district. However, as a part of what you are considering, if that's the criteria you're looking at, then Haley Park is zone park forest. So the two things you can look at is it's within 500 feet of a park and it's within 500 feet of a residential district. And so if you've got concerns about the impact of this use on Haley Park or that residential district, then that would give you grounds for making a motion one way or the other.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Chairman, just one last question. And I'm empathetic to the parking situation next to Red Wing, so I appreciate that, but I don't know if the city has a mechanism that would be able to control that, or if that would be up to the business owner. So I'm just curious, if he has concerns about the parking lot, what are his options if people who are not his customers park in the lot?
Mr.
Chair
Chair.
recognizes Vicki.
Thank you. So he has full authority to enforce, and you'll see many of individuals that have private-owned parking lots, and they can tow anyone that illegally parks in those parking lots. They can have those cars towed, and they have the legal right to do that. You see signs, if you park here, we will tow you. And that's a privately owned parking lot. If you don't have permission from the owner, pay a lease with the owner, then they have the right to mandate who parks there and who does not. We do need to really open up. Our city is growing, and we are seeing more and more uses come to downtown, and that's going to continue to happen. And the idea that you can park in front of the business you're going to downtown, those days are just about gone. It becomes more and more difficult. Downtown parking is meant so that you park in a spot and hopefully go to several businesses within a few blocks, and you walk to those businesses. You don't drive to those businesses. I understand that many of us still, we try to get as close to where we're going to go. That's natural for us to do. Because of the metering system that we have, it's really alleviated some of the complaints from yesteryear when we had employees parking in those valuable parking spaces, and then customers couldn't get into some businesses. So I think that looking at what we've got for parking in this area, we have to look beyond just the block. We have to look at a 2 to 3 block area to see whether or not there are available spaces for all these businesses to get their customers into their stores.
Chair recognizes Karen.
Thank you. Thanks, Vicki, for the clarification on what we can and cannot do as far as making a motion. My comment about the park didn't bother me as much, and that was based because it's just a small portion of that building, but I understand the rules and how we have to vote on this, so I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Mr. Bachman, did you have something further to say? If you can, could you please approach the podium and, again, for the record, give your name?
I'm Mark Bachman again with Sealy's Clothing Store. The first time I was really nervous when I came up here, but one of the other things I would like to, that I don't know if you guys are taking into consideration is the garbage thing, because we're using Essence of Coffee's dispenser, their garbage cans. If Essence wouldn't let us use it, we wouldn't have anywhere to dump our boxes, our garbage. We'd have to take it to the dump ourselves, because there's nowhere to put it behind 910 Main Street. And that was one of the criterias to have a place to dispose of the cannabis, whatever they dispose of. So I think you have to take that in consideration also. And there's 21 apartments across the street from us also. So I'm just would like to mention that again. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Vicki.
Thank you. I apologize. I had it on my notes to address that when you brought it up. Another great comment. One of the items that are different for a dispensary than there are other commercial uses is they've got to capture all of their waste product, and they've got to dispose of it in a very sealed and contained fashion so that it can't fall into wrong hands. It can't be used in any other capacity. So again, maybe Kittrick could add something in particular about what arrangements he has made for pickup of garbage. Obviously, if you're a commercial use in the downtown area or on any commercial property, it's on you to establish a contract with the commercial garbage carrier and to haul the garbage off. So perhaps if Kittrick could put some more detail to how they're going to address it.
The chair recognizes Kittrick Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kittrick Jeffries for representing Puffy's today. Good point on the garbage position. When you look at the waste portion of cannabis and cannabis businesses, the majority of the waste comes from two places: manufacturing labs and cultivation facilities. When you're harvesting cannabis material from cultivation facilities, you're bucking all of the usable flower off of big, large stocks that could take up a portion of this room after every harvest. By the time it gets to the dispensaries, it would be at the end of every week, we have a little medicine container is all our waste is every week. That waste is recorded into the cannabis seed-to-sale tracking system that's required by the state. Once it's entered into the seed-to-sale tracking system that we are destroying that material, then it has to be rendered unrecognizable, whether it's being mixed with grease or soil or any other form of chemical agent that renders that material unrecognizable. Although I don't know why anyone would want to use that material in the first place. We do that. We render that material unrecognizable, and then we just, at our 2120 West Main Street location, we enter that in with all of our existing garbage, and then throw that in the dumpster. In the instances of having limited garbage capabilities, we would service a weekly pickup, especially of our cannabis waste. Although it is not much, it's really not that hard to facilitate. So thank you, and I can still stand around for questions.
Chair is opening it up for any further discussion from the Planning Commission. Seeing none, I'm asking for a motion.
Either way, this isn't going to be popular, but Mr. Chairman, I want to make a motion to approve 22UR027 with the stipulations outlined in the staff report.
We have a motion from Brooke and a second from Mike. Any additional discussions? And all those in favor? Aye. Those who oppose? Aye. We have 4 and Karen oppose. And Haven has abstained. Okay. There being no further business, does planning have any further information for us?
One more item, Mr. Chair.
Chair
We'd like to
recognizes.
introduce you to Alex Osborne. He is our newest current planner, comes to us from Ohio. You will see him at the next meeting. He's got a few reports that he'll be writing. He may even be making a presentation. So hang on. We're certainly enjoying getting to know him. He comes to us with planning experience and definitely helps us open our eyes to see how things are being done differently in other areas of our nation. Thank you. Oh, and thanks to all of you that were able to join us at our Planning 101. We had a lot of fun doing that, and we try to do this intermittently as we see new members join Planning Commission and City Council. So if you didn't get a chance to make it at the last one, hang on, we'll do another one in the future.
Well, welcome. And Chair recognizes Brooke.
That's what I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman. So the staff did an amazing job last week of educating us on Planning 101, and I think specifically for somebody new to the area who's used to different zoning regulations, it was so helpful, and I feel very blessed that we have a team of people here at Rapid City that know what they're doing. So thank you very much, and for bringing us along for the ride. So I just wanted to acknowledge staff. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, there being no further business, motion to adjourn from Mike. Second from Karen. And unanimous, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Meeting's adjourned.